There's a line in that song that says, "All my delight is in you, Lord." And for some of us, that resonates. It's the place we want to be at. That I wish I could just be at that place where all my delight was really in you, God, that there weren't other things distracting. For some of the rest of us, it's sort of like, well, to get there, I got to do some stuff. Because if God's a good God, and we've been talking about this for the past 5 weeks, that, if God's a good God, then that means for us to have a relationship, to have a connection, and we got to get good in order to bridge that gap, right? At least to have a shot at this whole thing. And I hope that you've gotten clear over the last 5 weeks that has nothing to do with what we've been talking about. That is not about this idea of dancing with the law or delighting in the Lord. It's all based on what He's done. And we went back, if you recall, to the story of Exodus. We're going to go back there just briefly again today. But as we've kind of looked at this thing, one of the summaries, one of the kind of things that have brought us all together is this simple idea that God is saying, listen, I want to be at the center of your life. And that's what these laws are about, but they're not the laws that are at the center. I'm at the center. The laws are there to help me stay at the center because I know you, I've made you, and I've already said you're mine. And now I'm going to give you some rules to help keep this thing. Because ultimately, remember, it's not about us being good. It's about us being good. Something worked these last few weeks, yeah. And it is. It's about us being free. And so when God says, listen, to be the center, I don't want you to have any other gods before me or besides me because that'll just crowd me out of the center. I don't want you to make any kind of images or idols, things that you bow down to or things that you worship or things you'll think that if you hang them around your neck or put them on your wall or put them there on the coffee table in your house that you're kind of covered because I'm in the room now and that's the presence. And I don't want you, misusing my name in all the different ways that we tend to do it. And I don't want yourself working yourself to death or the people around you to death. I want you to honor the people in your life. I want you to not take their lives, not want to take their stuff, not to take their spouses. I want you to treat them fairly, to be honest about them. And I want, that's number 10 we looked at last week, for nothing to come in your life that so captures you that it becomes the driving force in your life because you need this, you want this, you desire that so much, if it's anything other than me. God really does want to be at the center of your life. And that's not said from God's point of view as, come follow me, make me the center of your life. That's why I made you to make you. I need all this adoration, all this praise. It's this one simple fact. That God knows your life, that He knows my life. Will work and does work better when we're free by having Him there at the center. But if your life is like mine, our answer to that is this. But God, I want to be at the center of my life. Right? I mean, that's what this whole freedom thing is about. We talked about it last week, All of us remember the days when we were teenagers, and if you're in a teenage year, you're feeling about this. If you're not there yet, kids, at some point you're going to feel this way. You say to yourself, I can't wait to get out of this place, right? This oppression. These people have all their rules and regulations of things I can do and things I can't do. I can't wait to be free and be my own person, right? And all of us in this room have had those thoughts go through our minds, and all of us have had that wonderful experience of going out and being free to do whatever we want. And discovering that we're not really free because now we can't just live any place we want because we got to pay for that stuff. And we can't just eat anything whenever we want because we got to pay for that. And our laundry doesn't get magically done, Caesar. I know that was probably shocking for you. It was shocking for me. I just knew when I got home, I put in this bin at my house, and later it was in my closet, in my dresser. It was all taken care of. It was the magic. You discover when you're free, it's all on you. But we keep coming back to us wanting to be the center of our life, don't we? It's why we make a lot of the choice decisions we make. And the problem is when we make ourselves the center, we limit God. And God would say, why would you limit me? And we say to God, well, why would God limit us? Why would He put these rules, these regulations, these things that don't do this, don't do that, don't do this? Why would He listen? Unless it's because of what the act and the attitude of doing those things does to others and ultimately does to us. Because we see other people's stuff and we think, why can't I take that? I'm free, I ought to be free, I ought to be able to. If God says I'm really free, I should be able to take what I want, do what I want. But it's not just the act, it's the attitude. We talked about that. And this is the piece that we've come to the last few weeks And I'm going to come to it one more time today because I think it resonates with all of us because it's so true. And that is that God knows that within us, within you and within me, is this bent that makes us look for loopholes, to manipulate things to our advantage, to be self-centered. I mean, you go back to these great 10 laws, these commandments, these rules that God gave to people that he was already in relationship with. Remember that? These rules don't define that relationship. These rules are given to people who are already in a relationship with him. And we can look at him and say, well, come on, God. I'm going to keep yours one and only, but other things in my life, they have to be important. My family has to be important. My job has to be important. My fun has to be important. And why would you take this stuff away from us? And this idea of having idols and images, wouldn't it be great that, God, I could put you around my neck or put you on my wall or put you on the dashboard of my car, you just kind of shake as I hit the bumps, and it reminds me that you're there, that I kind of shrink you down, that I'm able to take you anywhere, you're portable for me. What's so bad about that? Isn't when we make something about somebody, we put their portrait in the picture, isn't that an honoring act, God? Or when I try to do good things, even though it maybe isn't always perfect good, that I'm trying to do at least in your name? God, I can understand we ought to honor our parents. It's not that hard to go pick up a card at the store and, love you and Mother's Day and send it off to my mother. It's not that big a deal. And I can understand not murdering somebody. That kind of makes sense. But come on, this whole idea that every week, I have to take a day off? Come on. How? Or the fact that I can't get the stuff or take the stuff that I really want? That I can't hook up with the people I need to hook up with because, God, come on, God, I might be their soulmate. They may be my soulmate, And God, how can you limit us when you say, don't say false stuff about somebody else? Have you heard what they've said about me? And God, this whole idea about not coveting, not desiring something, that's really what drives me in life. I see something I desired and I get to work hard and I try to be a success. Isn't that a good thing, God? And in this whole part of knowing us that we have this bent, we forget that in the process we unfree ourselves. And that's why this is all also key and also important, is because of what it does to us when we get entangled in it all. So I'm going to tell you one more time today that God is not trying to make you good. He's just simply trying to keep you free. Because if he was trying to make you good, he would have gone a whole different kind of way. He would have a little brain zapper thing, As soon as you said yes to him, zap your brain, to make you good, right? He wouldn't put all these rules up and say, now do them all. That's good, and when you're good enough, you'll be in with me. God said, you're already in with me. And you're free. Your problem is the same as my problem, as that is not only convincing ourselves that we're free, but trying somehow to keep that as our daily experience. These other things don't grab us and pull us and get us all entangled up in all this stuff, and we're not free any longer. See, the 10 Commandments are not a prerequisite for a relationship with God. They are, in fact, proof that a relationship already exists. See, so often, and if you've been around church a lot of your life, you've probably heard them as sort of, they are prescriptive. This is what it means to be a follower of God. When what if they're really just simply a description? This is what it means to be a follower of God. It's what it means to be free people. Not people who are doing this in order to get in with God, but these people who are recognizing that this is the things that God has said, I'm going to try to keep you free through all this. And we talked about that this has been the consistent message throughout the Bible, though at times it hasn't been the consistent message that we've heard. Because the reality is, if we get rules and we say this is what it means, it's easier to know whether we're in or out, because I'm doing all the good stuff. And the more sinister reason is it's easier to manipulate people and control people. Because this is what it means to be good. And if you're not good, you're bad and you're out. So to be in with us, you got to do all these things. And you don't see that at the creation. Adam doesn't come out and God says, hold here, before we get started here, Adam, let's go over the rules. No, Adam pops out. He kind of is all excited. He sees animals. He starts naming animals. You know, he's got all this crazy stuff kind of seeing, and all of a sudden he recognizes he's by himself, and God says, okay, and puts him to sleep, you know, wakes him back up. Here's this woman. He goes, whoa, man, you know, hey, there you go. We're all set, you know, here. And it's after this whole time that God says, okay, you were in a relationship. This is how it goes. Let me just give you a way to stay free in this whole thing. And we talked about that the book of Exodus, this great book of Exodus, it's coming out of Egypt for God's people. People whose whole history has been slaves. For over 400 years, that God shows up one day and says this to Moses. Moses, I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. And Moses is like, your people? Well, how did we get to be your people? You know, we're Abraham's offspring, but we've never been a people. I mean, they started off as a family. And he says, listen, I have heard their cries for deliverance from their harsh slave drivers. I've heard all this, God says. I've heard the cry of my people. And I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to break in. I'm going to come rescue them. And it's months later, after all that's happened, that God gives his very first commandment to his people. People who have not done anything, people who don't know right from wrong because they don't have any rules, but it's not based on that. God says, this is my people. And to them he comes with this very first commandment. Found over in Exodus chapter 20. When he tells Moses, listen, tell the folks this is how it's going to work. On that night, I will pass through the land of Egypt and kill all the firstborn sons and firstborn male animals in the land of Egypt. Now, a little background context. Before he gets to this statement, a bunch of stuff has happened. Moses has gone back to Egypt. He's gone to see Pharaoh, the king, the ruler, and says, hey, God says, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, yeah, say it like you mean it. No, right? And so Moses says, okay, and leaves. And he comes back the next day, and he tries to convince Pharaoh that's in his best interest and for all the stuff to take place. And so he does some stuff, and Pharaoh does some stuff, and he says, let my people go. And he says, and it goes back and forth. And so then God kind of keeps raising the stakes, you know. All right, you know, we'll challenge your gods. You got like frogs, we're going to put frogs every place. So they got frogs every place, in their beds, in their pantries. You know, you're getting your bowl of soup, and out pops the frog. You know, they're just everywhere, right? And so he goes back, let my people go, and he says, so this goes on and on and on. And so we get to this point where God says, okay, we've gotten to the end. I've given him every opportunity. Now I'm going to do something that literally will get you free. Because it will hit so close to Pharaoh's heart and so close to the hearts of all the people. Because their firstborn sons are all going to die. And you can imagine if you're your firstborn child, let's just say firstborn child, let's just your firstborn. If all of our firstborns were tonight to die, this would not be a happy place, right? And if I the whole time have been saying, hey folks, everything's going to be fine, you know, don't worry about it, and all of a sudden all of our firstborns die, I can imagine what you'd say to me. It would not be proper to say inside these walls, right? Let those people go, right? And so we get to this night, and God says, here's how it's going to work. This is my first commandment. I want you to eat a meal. First commandment, eat a meal. And while you're eating, before you eat that meal, take some of the blood from the animal. Again, I told you the last few weeks, this is not like we think, oh, killing an animal. This was a daily thing. This is like opening up a can of soup. This was a normal, open up one of those packages, pouring it in, putting water, putting it on the stove. That's what it was. They take this animal, but they have some blood. That's part of the thing. But he says, take that blood and put it around, smear it around the doorpost of your houses. And then stay inside. Because on that night, I'm going to come. I'm going to pass through the land of Egypt, and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. This is going to be the big night, the big finale. And the blood that you have smeared on the doorpost, God says to him, it's going to be a sign. It's a sign of something. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. And this plague of death isn't going to touch you. Why? Because I've given you a law, a commandment to follow, and that is smear some blood around your post, stay inside the house, eat your meal, and wait and see what happens. And so they do it, and if you've seen the Ten Commandments movie, you know that they do it, and this plague comes, and you know the firstborn all die, and it's this terrible wailing that goes through Egypt, and it's just this crazy thing, and you know, the people get out, and they go out, and God frees them. And it's 2 months after that event, as they've been traveling around the desert, that God comes to them and gives them the law. Months after God has come and said, you're my people. So the rules aren't to establish that relationship. They're to people that are already in relationship with God. And here's the great thing about this story. God tells Moses, this is an important event. This is only one-time event. Only one time do you have to apply the blood to your doorpost. But every year, I want you and your descendants, everybody for generations to all to come, on this night to celebrate this passing over. This time when I showed up in a huge way. When I gave you one commandment, your very first commandment. And when you followed that, you were safe. You were covered. You were passed over while all this other stuff happened. In order to get you free, you were my people, and I was trying to help you become free. And this is the extent I had to go to pull you free from all those entanglements. And 1,400 years after this event, 1,400 years of every year stopping to not just remember what happened to our ancestors, but they were supposed to say, this is what happened to me. They were supposed to put themselves in the story. 1,400 years later, Jesus gets together in this room with all of his guys, his 12 guys. And he says, tonight, we're going to celebrate Passover. But tonight, guys, it's different. Because God's going to do something different tonight. And so as they're eating a meal, he says, you remember, you got this, we got this bread that looks like a wafer because it doesn't have any yeast in it to rise. Remember I told you every year you're supposed to eat this? It's supposed to remind you. This is the kind of bread you had to make some bread quickly so that you could go. Eat a quick meal and have something to take with you because this was going to be a rush thing. And tonight, this bread is going to be broken and shared among us. It's no longer about this bread that you ate, our ancestors ate. It's about my body. My body that just within a few hours is going to be crushed up. Crushed up not just for a nation, but for everybody who ever has, ever is, and ever will live on this planet. Later, when he takes the juice, this wine, this red substance that has that look of blood, and he says, look, every time we celebrate this, we're reminded again of putting this blood on our doorpost. We want to do it one time. But tonight, this isn't about the blood of some little innocent lamb that we had for a meal that night. This is about my blood. My blood that's going to be poured out. It's going to be shed. Again, not for a nation, but for every person who ever lived, forgive all of their sins. Guys, tonight, God is doing something different. He is taking a 1,400 years, a 1,400 year tradition, and doing something new. Something different. Something that this has been pointing to for 1,400 years, but right now, this year, becomes reality. And here's what I want you to do, guys. The next few days are going to be the worst days of your life. You have no idea. But after you get through these next few days, I have a job for you. I want you to go out and tell everybody, not just our nation, but every nation, of what happened this night, and what happened over these days, and what it all means, what it all symbolizes, how it points to the reality that everyone can have a relationship, an unconditional, based on love and my Father's mercy and grace, unconditional relationship with Him that is not based on what they do, but on what has been done for them. And tell them that this is the way it's always been. From the very beginning, this is how God has operated. It's never been do the right stuff and you're in a relationship. It's about you're in a relationship now. And I'm going to try to keep you free. And so if God ever blesses you, if he gives you some laws or commandments, don't look at them as, kind of things. Look at them as, he's giving these because he cares about you. He's giving these things to you because you are his child. Because we all have rules for our children, right? How many of you ever told your kids don't touch the stove because it's hot? I want to ask you how many of your kids touch the stove because they're hot, because I'm guessing there's probably quite a few, right? Because your child at that moment said, well, I want to be free. I'm my own little human being. I can do whatever I want to do. Mommy, you know, right? And when Jesus says, I want you to be like little children, he's not talking about that part of things, but he is pointing out the fact that children are so much like us as adults. We just do it differently. But the thing we're going to celebrate in just a moment is a reminder again that God has done everything possible. Everything possible to convince you and to convince me that he wants us as his children, that he accepts us unconditionally.